The Ducks might be in a rut, but there are some standout players so far this season, and no surprise, one of them is Lukas Dostal. We'll talk about those standout players on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for over a decade. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And let's start by talking about Lukas Dostal. Yeah, that's no surprise, right? Yeah, so there are a few players that have been keeping the Ducks afloat, and frankly, a couple of players that have prevented this Ducks team from starting off with 1 win, like the San Jose Sharks, who got their first victory of the season. Nice comeback against Utah. But the Ducks so far, they're kind of right there towards the bottom of the standings, right there with the Sharks, right there with the Kraken. But Lukas Dostal has been, I think, the shining star of the Anaheim Ducks so far this season. And I didn't really get to talk a whole lot about Lukas Dostal on the previous podcast, A, because it was a mood type of show, and B, this is Lukas Dostal doing Lukas Dostal things, and we've kind of expected this from him so far this season. In fact, it kind of feels like we're taking Lukas Dostal a little bit for granted here. So I'm going to give him his flowers on this podcast and talk about what has made Lukas Dostal so great so far this season and go dive into some of those stats. The first thing I do want to talk about as far as Dostal is the fact that he's getting a lot of high danger saves and a lot of high danger chances when the defense is simply letting him down. And the defense has let him down multiple times this season. In fact, Lukas Dostal, so far this season, we're going to start off with the high danger save percentage because it is pretty jarring. Now, I will say the league average as of right now for high danger save percentages hovers at below 800. It's actually around 794. That's the average high danger save percentage. Yeah, Lukas Dostal is above that. Lukas Dostal's high danger save percentage is 860. That's well above league average. There are a few players as far as save percentage that are higher than his. Mackenzie Blackwood, 865. Philip Gustafson, 875. Jake Ottinger, 886. Ottinger has been really solid this season. We'll talk more about him in a second. So it's been those kind of numbers. Freddie Anderson, Ilya Samsonov, they've both been pretty good, but not as far as high danger save percentage. No, they're below Lukas Dostal in that regard. Just some other players to throw out there. Alex Lyon, 903 high danger save percentage. He's been very good this season. Freddie Anderson, as I mentioned, is now out for a little bit of time, but he's been solid this season too, hovering around where Dostal is. And I'll also give props to Joel Blomqvist of Pittsburgh. High danger save percentage of 900. So there are some players that are above Dostal, but it's far and few in between. He is amongst the league leaders in that regard. How about, I don't know, high danger saves? Yeah, he's up there. 49 high danger saves so far this season in 6 games. The only 2 players above him in that particular statistic. Peter Mrazek, 54 across 8 games. UC Saros, 57 across 7 games. How about high danger shots against? This one is jarring. Lukas Dostal is right now 4th in the league with 57, playing fewer games than those above him. Connor Ingram, 59. Peter Mrazek, 71. UC Saros, also 71. But let's look at shots against and saves per game. Lukas Dostal has 9.5 high danger shots per game against him so far this season. The only player above him, the only one minimum 5 games against him is UC Saros. He's averaging 10.1 high danger shots against per game. And you see the slow start that Nashville's been off to this season. The Predators are off to an extremely slow start this season. Their defense has been a sieve so far this season. And Dostal is kind of entering that same realm of the defense letting him down and him being the last line time and time and time again. We're seeing this way too much. But I'll give Lukas Dostal flowers in this regard. If you go onto Hockey Stack Cards, one of my favorite websites to check out, they have something called average game score, which takes account, the chances, the danger chances, the high danger chances, the amount of saves, the expected goals that the other team should have. Minimum 4 games played. Lukas Dostal is 4th in the league as far as average game score, and it kind of drops off after that. It's going to be soon minimum 5 games. Samsonov's going to fall off. Freddie Anderson's going to fall off again because of injury. So there's only really one goalie that has done, I think, a more exceptional job as far as saving his team. I've already mentioned him. Jake Ottinger, I think, is the only one that has done a little bit better job. But let's look at average game scores. Bam. Ilya Samsonov first with an average game score of 1.52. Freddie Anderson, an average game score 1.48. Jake Ottinger, average game score 1.44. Hey, there's Lukas Dostal, average game score 1.33. But look at those individual expected goals against. Lukas Dostal has a goals against of 21.0, also about 21. The amount of goals he's allowed is 13. So he's well above the individual expected goals. He's expected to allow 21 goals. If that happens, the Ducks are going to lose 2 more games this season. So Dostal has saved their butts multiple times this season. So this is where we once again give Lukas Dostal his flowers, and indeed, the bakery is closed. All right, we're going to step aside for a brief moment to the first intermission, and this is going to be a big segment. We're going to talk about the forward that has really helped the Ducks out the most this season, Troy Terry. Stay locked in. And now a brief word from FanDuel, and get ready to start off the NBA and NHL season with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on everything all in one place. So let's say you feel a goal coming on during the game. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You're talking NBA. The Lakers are off to a meh start. The Warriors were off to an undefeated start before they got beat the other day. How about the Celtics? Could they repeat? As far as the NHL, could the Ducks actually get off the schneid this road trip? Can they beat the Islanders? Can they beat the Pittsburgh Penguins? Well, you can check all of that out on FanDuel.com. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started once again with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And please, folks, gamble responsibly. We're also brought to you by the Game Time app. And folks, I've been using the Game Time app for years now, and their Game Time picks are just incredible now. It's a brand new feature that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Maybe you're crazy enough to go to the World Series, Game 4 if it goes to a Game 5. Maybe you're crazy enough, to check out Game 5 of the World Series if it gets that far. Well, Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They also have zone deals, flash deals, which are very great for World Series games, by the way. So check out the Game Time app right now. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for 20 bucks off your first purchase. Terms apply. Once again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for 20 bucks off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Oh, it's game time. Let's talk about Troy Terry. Troy Vetchkin has been killing it this season for the Anaheim Ducks. So much so that he is easily the best player for the Anaheim Ducks so far this young season. And there's so many aspects to his game that I think we absolutely need to talk about. And like I said, this is going to be the big segment of this podcast because there's a slew of good things to talk about Troy Terry. First, let's talk about this point streak that he's on. He is currently riding a 7-game point streak dating back to just the second game of the season. He's been more than solid. Even the first game of the season, he didn't score a point, but he was very useful in that first game. So as far as the Ducks are concerned, there's only 15 players that have had a point streak of even 10 games or above. Top in that list for franchise history is Corey Perry, who had a 19-game point streak between October 21st, 2009 and December 1st, 2009. 19-game point streak where he scored 26 points in that stretch. Next on that list, Teemu Selanne, 17 games. Troy Terry, his best streak, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I certainly remember this. His all-star season, his big breakout season, 2021. From October 18th, 2021 to November 18th, 2021, Troy Terry rode a 16-game point streak where in that stretch he had 12 goals, 10 assists for 22 points. And Troy Terry is off to another solid start this season. I wouldn't be surprised if Troy Terry has another double-digit point streak. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm still going to stick by this. I still stick by my prediction that Troy Terry is going to lead the team in points this season. How's he doing with that, by the way? Oh, he's doing pretty well. He's got 7 points so far this season, looking more solid than I would say probably ever. I think his overall game might be even better than his first year. And by the way, so far this season, Troy Terry is leading the team in points. He has 7, like I mentioned, so far. But there's other aspects to his game that I'm just loving. And this is where we go back to hockey stat cards and we look at not only his skater card, but his skater rating. His offensive rating is a plus 0.7, which is amongst the top 20% in the National Hockey League right now. His net rating is just as good, a plus 0.4. Defensive rating still a little bit below, like it's still about league average, believe it or not, or slightly below league average, if you can believe that. Yes, there are Ducks players that are doing a somewhat competent job. Notice the word I use here, somewhat competent on defense, because there are certainly other Ducks players, defensemen included, that are not doing a good job on defense. Yeah. But let's look at the skater ratings. His goals are way up there in the league. Assists way up there. The one area that Troy Terry is in the top 10% in the league is penalties drawn. So I actually had to go back and look through every game and see just how many penalties he's drawn and how he has gotten there. We're going to go back to game 1. Yeah, game 1 of the season. The only game of the season, by the way, where Troy Terry didn't score a point, but he was very effective in this game, getting some solid shots on goal, doing a good job there, but also drawing a key penalty. Yeah, against Cody Ceci. So Cody Ceci was caught hooking Troy Terry, and that was a play where Troy Terry kind of beat the defense out. As soon as he got ahead of the defense, Cody Ceci had no chance but to hook him in order to prevent some kind of breakout play from happening. So Troy Terry, good job breaking out of the defense and drawing a penalty there. He drew a penalty the following day against the Vegas Golden Knights, a loss, but Troy Terry did score the only goal that game and also drew the only penalty that game. Troy Terry was literally the only player doing anything that game against the Vegas Golden Knights. That was just a filthy, unassisted goal from Troy Terry where he stole the puck, broke out, beat the defense, used his speed, and scored a brilliant goal. He used that same exact speed to draw a hooking call against Braden McNabb. And if Braden McNabb doesn't stop Troy Terry in that situation, Terry may have tried to score another goal. That would have been his second of the game. Would have been. And that would have given the Ducks at the time a tie game. But that was prevented. So I will say that was a good penalty to take from Braden McNabb, because if Troy Terry scores on a semi-breakaway there, or if Troy Terry busts out and doesn't get hooked, who knows? He may have scored his second goal that game. It could have been a 2-2 game. It could have gone to overtime against Vegas. That was the only Vegas penalty that entire game. So that was all thanks to Troy Terry. That was game 2. Then we jump ahead a little bit to the game against the Colorado Avalanche where, surprise, surprise, Troy Terry scores a goal late in the game. That was another game where Troy Terry was probably the one player that kind of did a lot, especially late in the game. Troy Terry drew a key penalty, a very key penalty against Cale Makar. This was with about 2.5 minutes left, where Cale Makar got his stick in between Terry's skates, and Terry did the brilliant thing, and we saw this again over the weekend, where as soon as Troy Terry feels the stick right on his skates, he doesn't just fall over and doesn't just dive. We've seen some players do this across the league. What Troy Terry does is he begins to pick up his feet a little bit, and I don't want to say like he does this every time, but he does this quite often. And this isn't a dive. This is him picking up his feet. And if one of his skates happens to catch the stick below him again, then he will likely have his skate on the stick and fall over. That is not a dive. A dive or embellishment is simply just falling over, flailing over, and going, ah! No, Troy Terry doesn't do that. He actually picks up his feet and trips once or twice on the same play on that stick. And because he moves his feet and because he tries to move and break away, the refs notice that, and they immediately raise their arms in the air to indicate some kind of penalty. Troy Terry's very smart about this. He's one of the highest hockey IQ players. I mean, we don't talk about hockey IQ, I don't think, enough about Troy Terry. But he's very cerebral, and he's very smart about those types of plays, especially when there's someone that's either right on his hip or stick right on his skate. It is a combination of a hockey IQ and drawing penalties. Just brilliant, brilliant play by Troy Terry. And by the way, in that same Colorado Avalanche game, because Troy Terry drew the penalty against Cale Makar, that led to a Ducks power play. They didn't score on the power play, but just as the penalty had expired, and this was not far off from penalty expiring, the Ducks still had the puck in the offensive zone. At the time, it was extended time. Cale Makar had no choice but to go back out onto the play, and just as Cale Makar had gotten back, Olin Zellweger passed it right to Troy Terry for the game-tying goal. This was just as Cale Makar had left the box. So Troy Terry drew the penalty on one of the best defensemen in the game and then ties the game right after that. Key moments. So it's not only having cerebral plays, but it's having smart plays at the best time. Okay. He drew another penalty, by the way, against the San Jose Sharks later on in the season. This one was another tripping call against Mikael Granlund. And guess what? Troy Terry did the exact same thing. Picked up his feet. How about the game against the New York Rangers? Same exact thing. Troy Terry used his speed to bust out. And by the way, this was the game where I thought the Ducks had a lot of hustle against the Rangers. Troy Terry felt Keandre Miller right on him, started to speed up a little bit, and Keandre Miller had no choice but to hook him. So that was a smart penalty by the New York Rangers there, because the Ducks, again, not very good on the power play. That was the only power play for the Ducks thanks to a drawn penalty by Troy Vetchkin. He did it again against the Devils. One of the few power plays the Ducks had in that game against New Jersey. That was Brendan Dillon tripping Troy Terry. And what do you think Troy Terry? Oh yeah, Troy Terry picked up his feet. This was even pointed out on the radio broadcast, by the way, where I think it was Emerson Edom that has pointed out this season that as soon as Troy Terry begins to draw that penalty, he starts to hustle a little bit more and grab the attention of the refs. So just brilliant drawn penalties by Troy Terry. Again, leading or almost leading the league overall in drawn penalties so far this season. Brilliant. All right, we're going to step aside for a second. I'm going to talk about a couple of the other players that are doing pretty well for the Ducks so far this season. We'll get to that on the other side. And now a brief word from Prize Picks, which is our top daily fantasy hockey website. If you haven't checked out Prize Picks already, then what absolutely are you waiting for? Because you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 picks. 4, the same amount of wins to win the World Series. You can check out Prize Picks for all fantasy sports. That includes baseball. Could Freddie Freeman hit another home run? I don't know. You could go into, football. How many passing yards could certain quarterbacks get? You could do daily fantasy hockey. Will Troy Terry score another point or 2 in his next game? How about basketball? Just how many points will LeBron James score on any given night? Yeah, they got all kinds of sports there on Prize Picks. So you could check that out right now by signing up. Yeah, sign up right now. Okay, download the app, sign up. Now use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app, use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back to episode number 947 of Locked On Anaheim Ducks. Once again, you were locked in with Jason Hernandez as we talk about some of the brilliant players on the Anaheim Ducks side so far this season to kind of break away from the ranting and yelling of the previous episode. I do want to bring up some of the star players, if I can say that. Yeah, the top players for the Anaheim Ducks so far this season. Of course, Terry and Dostal are leading the way, but there's a couple other players that I think we've got to give some flowers to. And one of those players has got to be Ryan Strome. Stromey has had a solid start so far this season. He's got 5 points so far, and also one of those players that has taken his lumps a little bit, just a little bit, but he's also found a way to win those 50-50 battles a little bit more than often. Yeah, he's been solid. But Leo Carlsson, I want to talk about Leo Carlsson for a quick second. So far, he's got 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points, getting off to another relatively good start. I don't exactly know who he pairs up with the best yet, but he seems to have a way to slot into whatever line possible. I mean, he's good with this player. He's good with Troy Terry. I think he's good in whatever line Cronin puts him in. And I would even say he's one of those players that if you put him, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to do this, but if you move him from line 1, line 2, line 3, he could be one of those players, especially down the line, where he could jumpstart an offense easily. So I think Leo Carlsson is beginning to grow more into an overall solid role for the Anaheim Ducks. I'm honestly really looking forward to see how he fares in the coming seasons. He's got that big body, good speed, by the way. Again, he's only 20 years old, but he's got that big body and uses it to his advantage. He's 6'3", about $194. I think he's going to continue to fill out. I think he'll wind up being 6'3" and a half, 200 pounds, maybe even 205. And if he can use that body a little bit more than he already is, then he's going to quickly become a force, not only for this Ducks team, but he could be a force for the league later on. He does need to work on his face-off a lot. That is still a weakness for him. He is a center, but he's losing way too many face-offs right now, but he'll learn. That is one of the things that can be taught and can be learned. We saw that with Ryan Getzlaf early in his career, where Getzlaf was losing a lot more face-offs than he was winning them. But Carlson will get there. And he's learning the finer aspects of the game. He is hustling for the most part. And I'll also give a little bit of a shout out here. Brock McGinn. Brock McGinn has quietly become a good middle six player. Let me repeat that. He's been a solid middle six player, because Frank Vetrano, Cutter Gauthier are obviously top six, but Brock McGinn, easily line 2, line 3 capability. He's got a goal so far this season, 3 points. He's been fine. He's been more than fine. Is he one of those guys that is throwing his body around a lot? Yes. He's almost got as many hits as Radko Gudas. Gudas has 26 hits so far this season. Freaking Brock McGinn has 25 hits so far this season, and he's blocked 10 shots. He's been quietly solid enough on both ends of the ice that I would consider him one of the few players that has at least done a decent enough job on defense to kind of keep the Ducks somewhat afloat. And I say this talking about a team that is off to a not so stellar start this season, but there are a few players that I think are doing fairly well or exceeding expectations, because I had pretty decent expectations for Brock McGinn, and so far I think he's exceeding those expectations. Brock McGinn, that is. So those are just some of the key players that I wanted to bring up, other than Troy Terry and other than the bakery, Lukas Dostal. All right, before we head off, the Ducks' next 2 games on the road are against the New York Islanders out in Long Island to complete their New York side of the road trip. And then Halloween night, they take on the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's a 4 o'clock Pacific start. The game on the 29th is going to be a 4 o'clock start Pacific time against the Islanders. So we'll see how that one goes, folks. I'm cautiously optimistic about that game. I'll go with that. Cautiously optimistic. Does that sound fine, guys? Yeah. Hopefully they'll at least win one of these two and salvage at least 2 points against the Isles and the Pens. They should, because right now the Isles and the Pens, as far as the standings, not good as who they've played recently. The Islanders are 6th in the Metropolitan Division. They're 500. The Penguins, they're off to a poor start, 3-6-1. If there was any chance for the Ducks to get some points, it is these 2 games. So be sure to check out those games on Victory Plus. That is if you're not watching the Dodgers, but let's face it, pretty much most of Southern California, at least this area, is all about the Dodgers, who are 1 win away from winning the World Series. So, yeah. Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for this podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. We are ad-free on Amazon, also on SiriusXM, so check us out there. You could subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Please subscribe now if you haven't already, so you don't miss a podcast. You could follow me on Twitter X at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter X is at LO_Ducks. So check that out, will ya? Also, you could email me at lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. Send in your questions, your comments, your complaints about the Anaheim Ducks, because I know there's plenty of those around. So once again, the email address is lockedonanaheimducks, all one word, at gmail.com. Once again, thank you all for your continued support, especially lately. It is so greatly appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason Hernandez, saying have a great rest of the day. Please remember to be safe out there. Please be kind to one another. Please be kind to yourselves. And Ducks, fly together.